Good afternoon, Robert Scribbler here. It is June 4th, 2018. Now today, this afternoon, this early afternoon, I'm going to talk with you guys a little bit about the present state of U.S. electrical vehicle sales. But before I do, I'm just going to talk with you a little bit about why clean energy is so important. Now, what we're looking at here is a graph from NOAA ESRL. And this graph shows the accumulation of heat-trapping gases in the Earth's atmosphere since 1700. And what this graph measures is CO2 equivalent greenhouse gases. So it includes all the other heat-trapping gases that human activity has produced since 1700, and it generates a carbon dioxide equivalent number. And just to be clear, carbon dioxide, methane, various chlorofluorocarbons, and other chemicals that have been produced by human industry are scientifically recognized as heat-trapping gases in that their molecular signature is able to trap heat in various mixtures in atmosphere. So there's hard scientific data pointing to the fact that carbon dioxide and other gases trap heat. And in fact, if you look back to periods of time in Earth's deep history, you find that when carbon dioxide was high, the temperature was high. And so you have not only an observed ability of CO2 to trap heat, say for example in laboratory tests, but you also have the correlation between high levels of heat trapping gases and past times in our history when the Earth has been warm. So what's happening now is that the level of greenhouse gas accumulation has climbed rather high, and so currently we have 493 parts per million CO2 equivalent gases in our atmosphere. And what's generally understood that with each doubling of CO2, the short to medium term climate feedback is enough to warm the Earth by about 3 degrees Celsius. And if you do double CO2 from the base 1700 level, you end up with about enough heat trapping gas to melt all of the ice or nearly all of the ice on Earth over a relatively long period of time, but eventually raising the ocean by more than 200 feet. And that's just one impact. You also, what appears to happen over the long term is that warming tends to continue with a doubling of CO2, and according to a 2008 study by James Hansen, you end up with additional warming beyond what he calls the fast feedback process, which science indicates is about 3 degrees Celsius for each doubling of warming. But that ultimately, because of the changes in the Earth's surface and changes in the way ocean takes in and releases carbon, and changes in the carbon cycle itself, you do end up with closer to 6 degrees Celsius long-term warming with each doubling of CO2. So just to be clear, climate scientists recognize that even just a 2 degrees Celsius warming is pretty bad for the climate system, and we're already seeing impacts now. So just keep this in mind that our use of fossil fuel emitting vehicles and power plants and various industries that produce greenhouse gases is putting the world on more and more dangerous footing. So this is one of the reasons why we wholeheartedly support a transition to clean energy, and one of the key aspects of a transition to clean energy is changing transportation away from burning fossil fuels and to zero carbon emitting transportation platforms such as electrical vehicles. Now, in the United States, during May of 2018, a total of 24,000 electrical vehicles were sold, and this is a new record. So if we look at May here, the 24,560 level would be up about here, which is nearly a 50% growth over last year, which is good news. And looking at this chart by Inside EVs, and if you're trying to keep track of electrical vehicles, this is a very good site to follow. We find that the Tesla Model 3 is leading the pack of competing electrical vehicles, followed closely by the Toyota Prius Prime, which is a plug-in electrical hybrid, which sold nearly 3,000. Tesla Model 3 sold about 6,250, according to Inside EVs. And then the next two best-selling electrical vehicles on the market were both Tesla Model X and Tesla Model S. The Chevy Bolt, which was marketed as a so-called Tesla killer, is selling about 1,125 in May. And the Chevy Volt, which is arguably a higher capable overall vehicle than the Toyota Prius Prime, is selling at about 1,675. There's some controversy about whether or not Chevy is wholehearted in its promotion of electrical vehicles. It talks a good game when it comes to electrical vehicles. It produces some very good electrical vehicles when it comes to range and capability, but it does not seem to try very hard to sell them relative to its capability. In my opinion, the Chevy Volt is generally a better vehicle, a more attractive vehicle than the Toyota Prius Prime, but consistently the Prius Prime outsells it. Another vehicle to look at is the Leaf, which sells very well globally, and in the US, sales have been ramping up recently. Another electrical vehicle which could see some support is the Chrysler Pacifica Hybrid, which is presently selling at about 650 per month, at least in May. So that's a general overview of the present state of play in the US. Tesla is dominating. They, between the Model S, Model X, and Model 3, they are selling approximately 40% or more of the market, despite a number of additional electrical vehicles being on the market. And they have a number of advantages, which we've talked about in previous posts. Now, looking forward, there's a new report out by Bloomberg New Energy Finance that is just giving a general outlook for electrical vehicles on the global scale. And what we can expect to see in 2018, according to Bloomberg, is that more than 1.6 million electrical vehicles will sell on a global scale, and this is comparable to just a few 100,000 during 2014. And in my opinion, we'll probably exceed the 1.6 million mark. I think we'll probably hit closer to 1.8 million. This is in large part due to major policy support by China, states like California, and various cities and nations and states around the world that are incentivizing electrical vehicles because they know they're facing a hard future when it comes to climate change, and in addition, they want to reduce air pollution deaths, which presently on the global scale are around 7 million per year. Now, Tesla happens to be dominating the US market due to just a very high number of electrical vehicle sales. And there's a bit of an issue here in the media. Media's been some media sources have been trashing Tesla, saying that they're not meeting goals. Tesla sets very ambitious goals, and presently Tesla is producing the most electrical vehicles in the world. They are breaking new ground, and no one else is able to do what they're doing. So I mean, saying that Tesla's not, meeting its goals is like saying, well, we tried to hit Mars, but instead we hit the asteroid belt, and they're the only people that ever hit the asteroid belt. So what Tesla's doing right now is unprecedented. It's likely that during June, Tesla will exceed 5,000 Model 3 per week burst rate production, and possibly as high as 6,000. And again, no one in the world has ever done that with a single model electrical vehicle. And that's what we're going to be looking at for both the US and Canadian markets. So to wrap up, Tesla's dominating the US market.